What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 116 of Value Town. I'm ChanManV, and he's Noxious. And Zalae's back. Zalae's back with us.
Yo, what's up, guys?
What's up?
It's good to be back.
Yeah. Celebration time! I love it when you're here.
It's been
been a while
long,
too, right?
Dude.
It's been a long while.
Yeah, man.
Trinity series, man, that kept me away. It kept me busy.
Yeah.
True, that is true.
It's a good run.
You got pretty far, right? But ended up falling to my teammates, I believe.
Yeah, and congrats to them. Well played to complexity.
You had the sickest win rate, though, I think, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Yeah, I think you had the best.
Yeah,
win
we
rate
had the
in event.
sickest win rate.
That's right.
I felt like
there you go.
I was really proud of us. Like I've
Yeah.
never felt that good about losing a tournament. You know?
Yeah.
I was like, damn, we did good. We looked
But
good.
it is true though. Like the results in the end actually favored you in terms of win rate. So props, big props.
Yeah, that's awesome. And of course, the Trinity series was great too, and wouldn't be surprised to see another one in the summer sometime.
I believe.
So you can get your revenge. Get your revenge on complexity.
I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Well, guys, it is the night before Christmas, or the night before
the night before Christmas.
This is better than Christmas.
Exactly.
Let's be real.
This
We
is
get actual
definitely
adult presents. These are adult presents, right?
Yeah, these are
This
adult
counts.
presents. And not only that, we actually get an appetizer, which has been the Volcanosaur, which a lot of people have been playing in the last, 12 hours or so. You guys get a chance to play that at all?
I played against it. I devoured it. It was delicious.
Devoured?
No.
Okay, all right. What they play? Did they play Paladin, Druid?
It was like a Reno lock, and I beat him with Control Warrior.
Reno lock?
He just jammed that one in there.
All right, sure.
And I executed it and went about my day.
That's the thing, man. All these people playing, Volcanosaur, and a lot of people I've been playing against play Paladin, because I think they're trying to simulate Galvadon to a degree. So it's almost pants-like, but not quite, obviously. And it's just like, okay, well, I just wait for my twisting nether.
It doesn't do anything in that case.
Wait for
right?
it. Yeah. Exactly.
So I made the mistake actually of I was playing Mill Rogue in Wild, and giving Druid's card draw is never the best thing in the world, but sometimes it works out.
Yeah.
So he played the Adaptazor or Volcanosaur, the Adaptazor. Here we go.
Pretty much
Now
what
he
it
started.
is. Pretty much an Adaptazor.
He played Volcanosaur, and I'm just like, well, okay, I can't really deal with this 5/9 that can be targeted by spells and hero powers, so let's let it sit there for a little bit until I find Vanish. So I draw, and lo and behold, I draw enough that I never find Vanish, but he finds like double Menagerie Warden while I'm drawing. So he just copies that Volcanosaur twice, and I've had like this massive board filled with nothing but 5/9 that can't be targeted, and I just don't know what's going on anymore.
Can we just say that all they had to do was release one card into standard for us to all realize how broken Bran is with all these new cards?
Bran Adapt.
Exactly, Bran Adapt, and I mean, there's so many battle cries. There's like 50 battle cries, 60 battle cry cards in this entire set. So Wild's gonna be crazy, and I mean, we're gonna see
Galvadon. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
That's the most win more nonsense I've ever heard.
I know it is.
Less than your deck,
Galvadon's
right? Like, what are
already
you
winning
doing?
single-handedly, and you're just like, let's slap another, 5 adapts on this guy.
Hitting up for 30 is not enough. We're gonna need 60.
Exactly.
We're gonna need a bigger dinosaur.
And my twisting nether does the same thing, whether it's 30 or 60. It doesn't matter.
Death Rattle, resummon this minion. No.
Yeah.
This would have been sick.
So for the folks that haven't logged in, go ahead and log into Hearthstone. You will get a free golden Volcanosaur. And if you want to play, Volcanosaur decks, you can go and craft one, but I haven't done that. I just can't bring myself to actually craft something I'll probably get tomorrow. So I held off on that. But it's fun to see a lot of streamers and everything playing Volcanosaur. And again, just a little bit of a preview into tomorrow, which is going to be insane. And in terms of the decks, how have you guys just been building, Ungoro decks or decks you're going to be trying out tomorrow in a lot of these deck builders?
Yep. I've been working on that. That's something I've been doing on my stream the past few days.
Mhm.
You know, deck here and there.
Yeah.
Did some deck building with Firebat with Jackie Chan. Good
Oh
times.
God, that's a good
That's gotta be
team
cool.
right there. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
meme team.
That's pretty much what I've been doing too. And it's been, I have to say, guys, it's been super fun. Like I like cherish this like point in each expansion when we can't quite play them yet. So there's no deck. There's no net decking so much right now, and people sharing on all the different deck websites. So it's all this like problem solving and brainstorming and solving puzzles and seeing how you can abuse certain cards. Like it's fun. Just take this card. How can we abuse it? And just going through that exercise. It's
Totally
super
agree.
fun. Yeah.
This is absolutely the best part of Hearthstone. New decks.
Agree.
Woo!
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
all going to end in the next week.
I'm so bummed out because I feel like the more I deck build ahead of time, the quicker I get bored with the deck building. Like I feel like I already map out so much. When I've done it last time with Mean Streets, I had the Zoo Paladin ready, I had the Hand Buffetin that fell apart, I had the Hunter list, I had a few of them ready, I had Kazakus list for every single class, and I felt like, I mean, maybe MSOG, like Mean Streets, was so straightforward that it didn't really evolve enough, right? Like it did. We got Coin Rogue, Water Rogue, that is later in the expansion. We got Reno Mage like a month and a half in that was finally refined. But I feel like Mean Streets, within like 2 weeks, not enough came up after I started deck building ahead of time. This time around, though, I'm pretty sure there are enough like build arounds that stuff's just going to come out. And I must say one thing, though, is that I love how the quests, even though they're parasitic and that they want you to build around them so hard that it feels like it's obvious, it really isn't. There are so many ways to build around each quest that it becomes like this super big experiment for players.
Yeah, anything really stood out like that to you, Zalae? Like just Noxious noticing that type of thing?
I hope that the quests aren't that good, and I kind of think that for the most part they probably won't be. And the reason I hope that they aren't that good is just because it feels a little bit like the Jade mechanic where they kind of just spoon feed you, like, hey, here's this deck, just play it. So hopefully there's more going on than that. And I do think there will be more going on than that. Like we're for sure in for bigger changes than other sets in the past because of the standard rotation. 6 key cards rotating out of standard: Ice Lance, Power Overwhelming, Conceal, Azure Drake, Sylvanas, and Ragnaros, right? And then on top of that, just 3 giant sets go away. And that leaves a huge power vacuum where all of these staple cards that just automatically went in deck no longer exist, and we've got to find new ways to play something else in those card slots. And so there's definitely going to be a lot of new stuff to figure out based on that, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, like when I was doing a lot of the brainstorming, what I realized is that when I was reviewing the cards, I had this, I guess I had this feeling that certain decks would be super easy to build. And when I actually went through the exercise of trying to build them, I realized, okay, it's not quite as easy as I thought, building even something very, very simple, like even the elemental deck. Everybody was just like, oh, elemental deck is going to be like super simple to build. It's actually not as easy to do it versus other decks. It relatively probably still is easier. But what I ended up feeling too is that there's potential for high skill cap decks. And that's the part that kind of got me excited. And I'm hoping, that the meta, I'm sure when it first starts that we're going to see some, fairly simple, not as high skill cap decks be powerful, but
I'm in charge now.
Exactly, right, exactly. But I feel like there is potential for that, and that includes the quests too. I think the quests are a bit parasitic, but at the same time, some of them are just hard to get there, and not die before that. And for folks that are, super great deck builders and even super great navigators, that's basically the formula for a high skill cap deck, and I'm excited for that to potentially be the case. And in the beginning, first weeks, it's going to be simple stuff. Like it's going to be very simple, just beat you down with like what we've always seen in Hearthstone, and then eventually, hopefully, we refine into something cool. But today, we're going to talk about some of the decks that we've been working on. It's going to be a mixture of good stuff that we think tomorrow will be great to climb ladder with, to just crazy meme conceptual type of things. And then we're going to talk about our top 5.
Ladder. I'm not so sure about climbing the ladder, but yeah, crazy meme. I'm down. I'm down with crazy
It's
memes.
us. I mean, it's that's what we do, right? But okay, so why don't we jump into some decks that we've been working on, and then we'll kind of conclude with our top 5 cards of the set, at least pre-release. we can be bold, we can be wrong. It's all good, but there's a lot of cards to choose from. That's for sure. Okay, well, let's go to this view here. Oh, actually, not this view. Dang it. I gave you a quick preview. Why don't we talk about why don't we talk about a deck that we think is going to be strong tomorrow? Like, if you guys want to climb the ladder tomorrow, what should you be playing? And Zalae, I'll let you take this one.
Probably Pirate Warrior. It lost literally one card, Finley, and Finley's really was a great card in Pirate Warrior, so that loss hurts. But if you look at what other decks lose, like look at Aggro Shaman, it lost Tunnel Trog and Totem Golem. Holy cow. Talk about just obliterating an archetype. Or if you look at Dragon Priest, it's all gone. There's nothing there anymore, right? Pirate Warrior was arguably the best deck, or it was like in contention for it kind of thing, and it lost one card, Finley. And so the idea with this deck is it's something you can play on day one with 0 new cards and win some games if that's what you feel like doing. Because Finley is no longer in the deck, the water package of Finja and Murloc War Leader and Bluegill Warrior got better, because Finja pulling out of Finley was always like a big downside that really weakened the package. So now that Finley's no longer an option, the Finja package gets better. So you just jam that in there, and here's something you could play on day one. It's not sexy, but it'll work.
Yeah. I think it's sexy. Pirates and Murlocs in the same deck. I'm gonna go ahead and call it sexy. I like the fact that that's a thing, right? Like Rogue has been doing this for a while, but they don't really go full pirate. They play like they one drops. The 2/1, the South Sea deckhand has removal, so it's not pirate deck that goes face in the way that it seems like we've been building pirates for a while now. It's much more for the utility of just getting patches out for an extra ping, more so than anything else. So I really like the idea of putting Finja in there.
I think I have this URL wrong. That's why it's not loading. So give me a second so you guys can see it all. I think you guys get the gist of it, though. It is definitely all the old stuff, with minus Sir Finley, like you said. So
if the video is not working, I can just say it. It's like the old Pirate Warrior had like 26 standard cards or something like that, and Finley rotated out. And basically, some of the tech cards like Bash and Mortal Strike got cut. There's only one South Sea captain in this list, and you add in 2 Bluegills, 2 War Leaders, and a Finch.
So I will ask something though. Like, do you think because there's a lot of really good taunts on curve coming out, right? There's a lot of them, and my question is Taunt Warrior going to be a natural stopgap to Pirate Warrior? Because even though you do get good trades with upgrade and bigger weapons, aren't you going to be stopped by people who just go, "Hey, I'm going to complete the Warrior quest and win the game that way"?
Yeah.
I think it's possible to build a Warrior Quest deck that beats these aggro decks. Whether it's going to be an effective deck in the metagame remains to be seen. Like, maybe Jade decks will still be too oppressive for that kind of strategy to be popular. But, I threw something together to try and attempt it, right? Like, the Warrior Quest is, I think, very powerful. Sulfurous was in contention for my top 5 favorite cards for the set.
Okay. All right.
I mean, anything that makes you turn into Ragnaros is sweet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't I'm not a huge fan of the card personally, but
you're not. I like powerful hero powers. Like, I like turning into Jiraxis.
Yeah, I just don't like the rag hero power all over again. Like, if the deck becomes good, I can't wait. Like, I hope it's not something you see in tournament play where the guy just jams a hero power every turn and then just coin flips his way to. I mean, we saw too much of that.
Obvious.
We saw way too much of that.
Well, what the cool part about that? I mean, this is kind of getting off to a little bit of a tangent, but the cool part about Sulfurous and it being random like that is, when you're building the deck, what you quickly realize is that you need stuff to accompany that, because there's no tempo on the board, and you're randomly just shooting at things. People are going to be putting tokens and stuff on the board, so you need a way to, whether it's Primordial Drake to clear stuff so that you get a higher chance of shooting what you want, or it's some other way to finish games too, alongside the hero power. You don't really notice that until you're just like, oh, I get Sulfurous, I'm just going to win. Like, I'm going to win after 3 turns, but that's not the case. Like, I can put Silverhand Recruit, I can put totems, I can put all this stuff to make the probability a lot worse for you with that card. But it is really good though. It's a weapon too, which is insane. So,
I guess I don't. At some point, if you throw enough Ragnaros fireballs, it becomes less random. Like, if you throw enough of them, at some point, it just consistently is eventually going to kill them. So
it is.
Yeah, you don't want to kill them with that hero power, right? You really want to be killing minions, because that's like a control deck where you're just trying to outlast and survive. That's actually, I think, a big downside to the quest is that once you get the quest off and you get this rag hero power, up to
You're on
50% of the time, your hero power just goes face and does almost nothing for your gameplay.
Right.
This is
what
why
I
you
mean.
play Alex
It's not,
Straza, right?
It's not
And
an
just
auto win.
go
Yeah.
switch the tempo. Start putting them at 15. So wherever it goes, it's just threatening lethal.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about a quest warrior so much, why don't we bring up a quest warrior that you had also, Zalae?
Heck yeah.
Let me see where.
Hell
it is. Heck yeah.
Yeah, like you were saying, Quest Warrior is like I think it's really cool conceptually now, but if it turns out to be good, it'll get really old. I think Noxious was saying it could be
but I
unpleasant.
think it's potentially a good deck. Like there's nothing about it that makes me think it's gonna get bad. I just wonder, like, in a world of Lakari sacrifices with 3/2 imps, like that keep coming out on the board 2 at a time, and you're just jamming at 33% every time. It's just
the warrior quest lines up horribly against the warlock quest if that's the world we're living in. So Fireplume's Heart is the quest. You would keep that off the mulligan against slower decks, and you could mulligan against an aggressive deck because you don't need Sulfurous to be an aggro deck. You just need to have enough taunts and fiery war axes and stuff to survive, right? And then you just win. But against the slower deck, it's like absolutely vital to having a functional deck that does anything. Maybe you get the quest off fast enough to keep Jade decks in check even. Who knows?
Yeah. And
the dream.
Just gonna talk about this a little bit more. There's one first mate. Shield slams, cornered sentries, executes, fiery war axe, slams, acolyte of pain, ravaging ghoul, shield block, tar creepers, Bloodhoof Brave, Sinjin. There's a Sinjin in here. Alley Armorsmith, Second Rate Bruiser, Tar Lord, and Primordial Drake. So that
was one of my favorite cards, Primordial Drake. It's not my top 5, I don't think, but it was close.
Yeah,
it was in like the final 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a nice one.
How can Chill Maw be a thing? And this guy's like, oh yeah, dude, I'm just battle crying removal, no problem. With a bigger health pool, count me in. Like
so many like control dragon decks that I wanted to build would have loved this card, but now the dragons are rotated out, and it's just this guy.
Well, I mean, this card is.
But Curator's the thing with him. Curator almost made the cut in this deck, but it kind of came out at the last second. It might find its way back in. Curator curving into Primordial Drake, that's pretty hot, right? Like that's something you're gonna have to watch out in the new metagame.
Yeah,
I like it.
I mean, functionally, it's kind of similar to what Baron was for a long time.
Yeah, it's like a Baron Geddon, except for that, it's got stats that you want, 4/8 taunt instead of 7/5 kill myself, right? And if I could just talk about a couple of the synergies in the deck really quickly.
Go for it.
So the new 2-mana 2/6 that spawns 3/1/1s for them, it's a lot like Dirty Rat in that you can't just jam it on 2 most of the time, because if you play that and then they play a Flame Tongue Totem and eat your 2/6, you're like really embarrassed about yourself and what have you been doing with your life. But it has some cool synergies. Like, let's say I play Acolyte of Pain on 3, my opponent doesn't kill it. Now I play the Cornered Sentry and trade my Acolyte into one of those 1/1s. Draw a card, it's still there. That's sick value. Or the more obvious synergy, you just play Cornered Sentry and then something like Ravaging Ghoul or Brawl. But I don't think Brawl's in the deck with this current version. But it's something I thought about having in the deck. And then also the N'Zoth's First Mate is just like a third early game weapon for when you don't have Fiery War Axe, because one of the big vulnerabilities of a deck like this, the deck's just trying to play a taunt minion every turn kind of thing, right? And so your opponent's going to generally be ahead on board and control the attacks, and they're going to try and set it up in such a way that they attack into your taunt minion and they have a 1 health guy behind, and then they're just crushing you, right? So N'Zoth First Mate fixes that problem. It makes it so they have to trade in such a way that they have a 2 health guy behind, or else you can actually clean it up. So it just makes it harder for them to exploit how predictable and vulnerable your taunts are to value trades.
Yeah, it's also not too bad with Cornered Sentry on the curve too. Like if you open up with N'Zoth's First Mate, lets you clean up the 1/1s afterwards.
Yeah, that's
I really like the concept. I noticed you, like, I was actually thinking of this type of warrior deck, like with the Direhorn guy and maybe N'Zoth, since you could technically go the Infested Tauren route and jam a ton of Death Rattle taunts to come back at the end for a final push, and then you start jamming Sulfurous powers in their face.
My issue with N'Zoth is that it's an alternate win condition. I feel like the quest is enough of a win. Probably, okay. I would get my intuition is that the quest is enough of a win condition, and I don't want to constrain I don't want to make my deck worse to try and put in a second win condition. I think 1 is enough.
See, so in my head when I was building this deck too. This is what I was talking about when I was mentioning that I feel like you need an additional, kind of end game or damage accompanying Sulfurous, because these guys are not going to be threatening. These guys are not going to do damage alongside Sulfurous. So it's like, what kind of tempo are you going to have on the board when your opponent's, your opponent could just completely.
I'm just trying to survive. I'm
you're
just
trying to
trying
live.
I'm just trying to play taunts, not die, get the quest off, and then eventually the hero power will make him quit.
Yeah, because as they starve for cards, it's kind of like the same thing as Control Warrior. Instead of winning with fatigue, though, you're winning with 8 damage a turn. And I'll say that, like, about the new Control decks they're pushing. Like, for all we laugh about Jade Druid, it's still very slow. It can be considered a control deck in some matchups. And it just doesn't let you get the fatigue. The same way this quest is telling you, you can be a control deck too. Good taunts on curve seems good. End the game before fatigue, because no one likes those games. So Blizzard, like, they're basically imposing the anti-fatigue philosophy in a way that makes us feel like we're still playing a control deck, right? Like it definitely looks that way.
I know what you mean. Yeah, totally. Oh, another, one thing here. Did you consider Direhorn Hatchling this card? Given that it gives you
that's
the
what I was
taunt
talking
too? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we talked about it a bit. We just didn't like the numbers on it. Just didn't seem that appealing.
Yeah.
The 6/9 is
like 5 mana 3/6 taunt is we've seen a 5 mana 3/6 taunt before in the Cthulhu decks, and the card was underwhelming. And the fact that it shuffles something into your deck I think we've seen that's generally not that big of an upside.
I would say the only thing that it is an upside from the standpoint of if you had like a set number of taunts that you wanted to include here that you feel like lets you survive, you can subtract 2 from that, right? If you run 2 of these guys, because you get 2 extra cards, right? That's kind of how it works. But outside of that, is the 6/9 a 7 drop or what is it?
It's a 5 drop.
I think it's the same cost.
It's a 5 drop.
It's a 5 drop.
God. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
I think
kind of like a white
the
eyes or
average is
whatever.
good. Yeah, the average is pretty good, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The only thing about this, again, it's just I feel like Sulfuris, in my head at least, I think people are going to be able to play around that so it's an additional 2 or 3 turns than people think to end a game. And that's,
well, I'm not trying to kill him with the Sulfuris. I'm just trying to make it clear that in the long run, I have inevitability, I have card advantage. You're going to run out of resources, kind of thing, right? I just want the Sulfuris to kill their dudes and make them quit. I'm hoping it never goes face. And I think the idea is you have some AOE from like Primordial Drake and the weapons sort of, and Ravaging Ghoul, and hopefully that can prevent them from going wide on the board and making your rag shots ineffective.
Yeah. If this is too good, then that will be a bummer, in my opinion.
I doubt this is too good.
This is too easy. It's just too easy to build this. That would be really.
There's
really
a lot of different ways to build this. I really didn't know how to build this deck. There's like there aren't brawls in this deck. Is that right? I don't know.
Yeah, I tried both too. Yeah.
We'll probably have to. This is one of these things where like you first draft very quickly in the first game. You're like, yep, this doesn't make any sense, and then you swap it out. Like having Curator in, for instance, could be amazing just to guarantee Primordial Drake on the curve. So you could technically cut one of the mid-game taunts, for instance, that you feel like you don't need. And you'll know that as soon as you play it the first time. It'll be pretty damned obvious, like, after a few games.
And a lot of the advantage of playing a few games is just that we'll get to see something about the new metagame. Because right now we don't know that much. Like, I would guess that it's going to be an aggressive metagame because historically it is. And,
if it's an aggressive
I don't see any
metagame,
reason for that to change.
If it is aggressive, aggro with Pirate Warriors and Zoo decks or even Murloc decks, then yes, this deck is really good against that. For sure.
Well, but the Zoo I think beats this, right? If they're playing the quest, then your inevitability just doesn't function at all. What are you doing?
Okay, yeah, I guess that's a good point.
I guess your Primordial Drake is just like the game plan. Just play Primordial Drake and you win.
It might not be enough though. You probably need.
It might.
You probably need probably 1 brawl in here just to fight against those type of decks. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's see what else we got here. We've got. Might as well keep going with your decks here. You got a Quest Mage, so let's talk a little bit about Mage.
Yeah, this is one of the more fun ones.
Yeah.
Quest Mage is kind of just the new Freeze Mage, actually, in terms of what it accomplishes. So the quest is you play 6 spells that did not start in your deck. So the enablers for that. Yeah.
Open
and
the
then
way.
You get a Time Walk, right? 5 mana, take an extra turn. So the enablers for that there's many. There's Babbling Book, not Arcanologist, Babbling Book, Primordial Glyph, Shimmering Tempest. It's kind of like a bad Babbling Book, but you just really like that effect. Mana Bind, which is there in a large. I mean, it's partly because it's enabler, and it's also it enables Arcanologist, which is just a strong card. And then Cabalist Tome, which is maybe not good in this deck. It's really slow, but it really draws a lot of cards. You're gonna get that quest off for sure if you find a Cabalist Tome. But the idea is you just stall the game with Frost Nova, Doomsayer, Blizzard, and some random removal spells until you get this quest off from having drawn enough cards and played these things that are not in your deck. And then once you get the quest off, you have Time Warp in your hand. You try and set it up to where you go Arcane Giant, take an extra turn, and then on the extra turn, you Alexstrasza, they go down to 15, you attack with 2 Arcane Giants, and that's lethal. So it's an OTK. It's sort of over 2 turns, but I call it an OTK, right?
It's definitely an OTK deck.
But the reality is you really don't have to OTK them. You can just, if they're an aggro deck, you can just kind of like stall, play an 8/8, and figure things out.
Well, you have enough burn, too, because you get 10 min. The exercise with this particular deck was basically figuring out, okay, how do we abuse Time Warp, right? And Time Warp, for those of you not familiar with Time Warp, it's the text is literally add another turn, like you get an extra turn, and what that means in practicality speaking is it means that it costs 5 mana to cast Time Warp, so anything that you can cast like from a minion standpoint with that 5 mana you have, lose a summoning sickness, and that means it essentially has charge. So you kind of try to figure out the best way to abuse that. And the best way to abuse that is Arcane Giant. Because the Arcane Giant is probably the most bang for your buck for the least amount of mana. And then your following turn, you get 10 mana to do whatever you want. So you can Alexstrasza, take him down to 15, kill him with the 16, and you still have 1 mana that you can do something with too. So you can either do that, or there's different combinations of what you can do with the 5 mana, again, charge. And then you have all the burn that you normally would have too, like the 2 fireballs and the frostbolt. So there's a lot of different damage sequences you can have, but the OTK aspect is the Alexstrasza.
That's the big draw to me. Like, go ahead.
What I love about this OTK deck is that it's very functional when it's not OTKing. It can just play a normal game of Hearthstone. The Arcane Giants and the Alexstrasza being the OTK cards, it's like, these are just fine cards you could put in a deck, Play some 8/8s, maybe heal yourself. Maybe they're cheap. And it's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely is. And then you're going to be getting all these extra extra spells too. So those could be fireballs, those could be torches, those could be, all kinds of damage anywhere. So even having 15 damage in a single turn purely from spells is pretty rock solid too. You can get 21 from that if you have 3 fireballs in it.
So have you considered putting in Burgly Bully in the deck? Because that was one of the cards that for the quests purposes seems so easy to just get
I considered it,
out of,
and I don't like it. Here's why.
Okay, go ahead.
The deck does not have a lot of kind of supporting minions sort of thing, right? Like we have minions at the end to finish them off with Time Walk, the Alexstrasza, and the other thing. And then we have some early minions that are really just kind of, they happen to be bodies, but they're more because you're drawing cards and cycling through your deck. So the Burgly Bully comes at a point in the game where you probably don't have board control, and I think they can probably pretty easily trade into it and kill it off without having to play a spell and give you any coins. And it's just your deck doesn't use the body well. Freeze Mage is all about ignoring the board and making their board kind of less relevant. You don't give them minions to shoot at, which Burgly Bully kind of does. You don't make their removal good. I'm not sure you're gonna get coins, and I'm not sure that I want a 4/6 in my deck.
Yeah, so the point is basically, since they don't have anything to take care of outside of like pingable stuff, in the early game, or Big Doomsayer, they're never going to find removal targets. So don't start making like a one-of that's going to suddenly turn a card that's dead into a live card.
I could be wrong. Maybe the card's good in the deck, but that's my instinct. If you want to try it out, go for it.
There's so many ways to build this too.
Yeah, it's a
like,
different
I'm
build
thinking you could build this in a tempo fashion if you wanted, really. Like there's nothing holding you back. It's just the Archaeologist is such a carry card for these decks. Like across the board, the 2 mana 2/3 that draws you a secret is probably going to be the carry card of the expansion for mages. Like I'm looking at Mage and I just can't think of a deck to build these days. I'm looking at everything. And I feel like without that card, Mage would just lack this power early play that lets them get card draw and also set up options for themselves. So that card being there is a blessing.
So one thing to mention, though, about this card draw, because there is card draw in this deck, it's just not card draw necessarily for, the cards you put in the deck. So that's why it's good that this deck doesn't have the OTK being, just the main finisher. Like I think the games will finish equally, like maybe 50% of the games will finish with that combo, and 50% will finish with just your normal type of, mage burn, whatever type of play. And so I think that's going to be really, really interesting. Antonidas, any consideration for those type of builds? I think that falls more in line with like a bully build, but
So Antonidas is good with the Frost Nova. There's not a lot of cheap spells. There's no Ice Lance. That makes Antonidas much worse.
Well, you got mana bind.
I guess the
Mana bind's
primordial
gonna be-
glyph makes it better.
Yeah.
So
And mana
Antonidas
bind as well,
Frostbolt,
actually.
Antonidas
Mana bind
Frostnova.
works. Mana bind gives
Mana
you a zero
bind.
cost spell. So
Yeah, I mean, Antonidas is a consideration. It's like a slow card that's kind of a tech card, I would say, for certain matchups. Like it doesn't necessarily contribute to your normal game plan, and it's a weak card against aggro, but it's very powerful against some slower decks. So it's kind of a metagame call whether you want to tech in an Antonidas to beat certain decks.
Yeah.
I was considering for a while, going for the Molten Giant route, where you set up Ice Block, let yourself die at 1 HP, then you go Molten,
gosh,
Molten Reflection, and then you
Mhm.
Time Warp.
Yeah.
But I feel like the amount of pieces you have to assemble
What if they just don't pop the ice block?
Right,
Some
what
decks
if
can
you die to
strategically do
fatigue
that.
as you just blow up?
Well, the issue too is that, again, it's like my point. You only have Arcane Intellect that really draws your cards.
Yeah.
So even finding the Molten Giants and even let's say you had Arcane, let's say you just want to do the Walk of the Giants mage like old school, and it's like you have to find these cards. So the more cards you have to find to end games, this deck is actually not great for that. And it's interesting. It's definitely very, very interesting. As good as Arcanologist is, there's still no tempo play, right? Like, do you guys see a tempo mage out of this?
Out of this? Or you mean the general?
I
the general
did
quest?
build a secret
Did you?
mage just last night.
Did you?
Yeah.
Is it any good? You
Arcanologist.
think it's going to be good?
Uh,
God,
I'm excited to find out.
okay.
Yeah, I'll say
Flame
that
Waker
much.
was so
It lacks
good.
like the Flame Waker turns where you
So
just
good.
blow up their board. And
No,
have
it's
stuff
got some
develop,
powerful
but
stuff.
okay.
Playing a 0-mana secret and the 2/3 Medivh's Valet is really
Yeah,
powerful.
sure.
So I think Arcanologist is exactly the kind of card that Secret Mage needed to get better. But is it enough to make it better enough? Like, there's no Flame Waker, there's an Arcane Blast. Like, it loses a lot compared to it.
Yeah.
I was looking at an elemental mage too, like because all the
I tried
a lot of
that
the
too.
cards you have are like elemental based, and you could still play element like the 4-mana 5/4, right? That discovers like that gives
Yeah.
you a Molten Geyser. That Molten Geyser is fuel for the quest, right? So you could actually play elementals and get enough. Like you have the Tempest, you have the 4-mana 5/4. All that stuff gives you quest fuel. So there's a lot of ways to approach the quest deck building. And really, I think it'll take a solid month and a half before it solidifies like into like a before we know what the quest mage is. So I like this first draft though. It's pretty good.
And for those of you listening, this is going to be played very similar to a Freeze Mage, just because it has the Frost Novas and the Doomsayers and the Blizzards to stall out things. But on top of that, it's got Arcanologist, like we're talking about, Babbling Books, the Quest, a Primordial Glyph, Shimmering Tempest, the Ice Blocks, Mana Bind, Fireball, 1 Polymorph, 1 Kabbalist Tome, and Alex Straw's in the double Arcanes. So I think this deck is going to be strong. That's my prediction right now. Is that
Zalae never makes strong decks. Every deck he's brought on the show has been complete garbage.
Exactly. What are you doing? Do you know what we do on this show, dude? we don't talk about
Even
viable
esports.
decks. No, just kidding. That's good. That's good stuff. All right, why don't we switch over to let's talk a little bit about Priest, since me and Noxious decided to be crazy and bring some or talk about some Priest decks. Like, who's got good
What are we
Priest decks?
thinking?
Yeah, like, geez, what are we doing? So here's mine, and let me bring up Noxious's real quick too. His is a Highlander deck, so it's got a lot more cards than mine does.
Stranglethorn Tiger. Oh my god, I love where your head's at.
Yeah, I like that a lot, dude.
So,
this is beautiful.
This is a disclaimer. I know this deck might not be good, but there are extremely good discussion points, like in a lot of the cards that I included here, and probably the same too with yours, Noxious. But let me start with mine since mine's on the left. Okay, this is your typical Inner Fire Divine Spirit type of package. You know, you're going for OTK, and the way you achieve that is you got to figure out targets that are A, either stealth, or B, just not a desirable thing to kill or not taunt, right? And when I approached that in that fashion, the things I that stuck out to me were obviously Stranglehorn Tiger, just nothing new, but Humongous Razor Leaf, that is a 4/8 can't attack target for 3 mana, and that card is
Humongous?
good. It is stupid good, actually. Yeah.
I think it's really insane.
Yeah. So I that one's really interesting because, I mean, what is your opponent going to do? Like, is he going to actually go and attack a 4/8, knowing that you're possibly setting that up, or is he just going to let it go, given that it's a statue? So that's kind of where I started. And then, of course, after that, I started taking a look at, things like card draw, right? Card draw is so tough for priests. So you got to include the power word shields and the clerics and the purifies, even for the razor leaf. Yeah, it's crazy as it sounds. The razor leaf, and then even mass dispel, just to get rid of any big taunts that you run into, so you don't have to run any kind of shadow word spells at all. Got Dragonfire, of course, for removal, and then you've got Shadow Vision, which is, I think, the most interesting thing to talk about. Oh, Radiant Elementals too, which are essentially Sorcerer Apprentices for priests that discount all spells by 1. So you can get in a position where, it is, it's better. It's a 2/3 versus 3/2. So you can get into a position where you're casting the Inner Fires and the Divine Spirits for free. If you can kind of combo that if you want. But the cool thing about Shadow Visions for me, and I know we reviewed it on maybe a couple episodes ago, and I was just kind of like, it's all right. It really just depends on what future spells come out. I think I just had that aha moment when I was, trying to dig from, just figure out good priest decks, and I just realized freaking how amazing Shadow Visions is, because Shadow Visions is essentially tracking for priest, but it's tracking for spells, which is a very small subset. So you can set up any kind of, OTK like things, whether it's this or it's like Mind Blast, and if you're going to go that route with hopefully some future spells in future expansions, then finding those spells is a super high probability. Like if I need to find Inner Fire or Divine Spirit, I don't have one of them, and I have a Shadow Vision, there's probably a very, very good chance I'm going to find the one.
Well, you get multiple chances too, right? If you have Shadow Visions in the deck, sometimes you can pick that one up, then play it again. So you can cycle into Shadow Visions until you finally pick up the spell you want. And I think that's the underrated portion of playing two of those cards, is just how you're able to discover the second vision. I think that the strength of Shadow Vision is the fact that it's basically not a legendary card. That makes any sense. I feel like that's where it becomes much, much more consistent.
It's not legendary, but also it's like having a third Divine Spirit or another chance to get one of your things. Yeah,
consistency, redundancy, these kinds of things. Exactly. It's one of the most interesting build-around cards I've ever seen, I'd say. Shadow Visions is.
Yeah, so you could be in a position where you only have one piece of it. Let's just say you have just the Inner Fire. You could actually just have Shadow Visions instead and try to find the Divine Spirits. It functions that way. So, this kind of combo deck has always been too slow to be good, and it still could be. I added Tar Creepers, I added Doomsayers to try to lengthen it out. But I think the combo happens sooner with this deck than it has in the past. And, we'll see what that race looks like. In general, though, I think it's just, I wanted to bring it up just because I felt like it was a great point of discussion.
And on the topic of those decks, I feel like the one card you omitted to put in the deck is Shambler. I feel like this deck just performs way if the 3-mana 4/8 comes out, it doesn't attack. They ignore it. It's so terrible. It is such a bad card. They can't justify jamming 4 minions into it until Shambler shows up. Then suddenly their life becomes a bit more miserable. Is the whole eerie statue shenanigan?
I had it in here. I had it in here. It's just the hard part was really thinking about A, staying alive, and B, and you could replace Priest of the Feast, for instance,
Mass Dispel,
and then secondly it was I have to draw cards. Priest has such a terrible engine for drawing cards that it takes a lot of investment to get 8 to 9 cards, and that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. And that was the challenge. The challenge was figuring out how I can dig, and that could be tweaked. If Shadow Vision really is that good, then maybe you can remove some of these card drawing mechanics and then add a Shambler or add just more minions.
So one last thing, I feel like Lyra is bad. She's not bad. Let me rephrase that.
Oh, Lyra.
If she's good, Lyra, the Sun Shard is the priest legendary for 5 mana. It's a 3/5 that lets you get a random priest spell whenever you play a spell. That card is probably not amazing, but if it is good, I think it's going to be completely bonkers. And
it's
when you're running 2 Radiant Elementals and 2 Shadow Visions, I'm just thinking, why not just slap Lyra in there for the one-off time where you just get a disgusting outcome and you just get the cycle Shadow Vision into Shadow Vision into Shadow Vision, just fill up your hand with options. So it's I want the card to be good, so I'm going to try to make it work, but
it's scary. Yeah. It's this is really great, and like I applaud the dev team for making these, or the design team for making these cards. But at the same time, I know they're probably super scared to print good spells now. Like, with Lyra, especially direct damage spells. Like, I think Mind
Cheap
Blast is
spells.
all we're gonna get, guys. Like, literally, because if Lyra comes up and you're casting free spells, basically, it can be scary, from that standpoint.
Yeah. Well,
But-
time to make double Burgley Bully Lyra Priest and go to
Yeah.
town. That being said,
Heck yeah.
on the other side of the deck, building, I made a Highlander Priest. This is a first draft. It's awful. It's god awful.
It's
but
awful. Okay.
I think
Priest,
all of
I
our
think-
decks are god awful. It's
Right.
fine.
All the
Yeah,
decks are god awful. That's
exactly.
great. I think we're all gonna have a miserable time tomorrow on the ladder.
Except Pirate Warrior. That's a good one.
Is it a
That's a good deck.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's true. So the idea here was just recreate a Reno deck without Reno. I mean, we do still have access to Kazakus. We still have access to Raza the Chain. And we have the ability, if we want to use, which I didn't put in the deck, but you have the ability to use Greater Healing Potion in the deck. If you really want it, if the metagame becomes too aggressive and you want Greater Healing Potion, jam it in there. So the deck runs something like 11 Death Rattles, I think. And what struck me was the fact that N'Zoth just worked okay with the way in which the deck panned out. It's like you still bring back Infested Tauren as a taunt. You don't want to die. They still keep Dragonfire Potion, and dragons are gone, so that's probably going to be... It's probably going to operate similarly to a Light Bomb in many matchups, I think. So that board clear just got a ton better across the board. My biggest worry for the archetype is, like, how do you draw enough cards to get to where you want to go? Like, every single time I build a priest deck, I just go back to it, and it makes me feel so uneasy that to look at the lack of card draw in that class,
that's my point. That was my point, right?
Such a problem. It's such a problem.
My issue actually more with Priest, and even especially the Highlander one, and even Death Rattle, whatever, is that what is the end game for Priest? Like, I don't even know how to
reset
finish
your
it.
health. Pass. What?
I don't even. I mean, I get all these cards. Like, I'm gonna get all these cards from my opponent's, deck, and I've got crazy card power and value. But what the hell do I even do with it? Unless I get my opponent's end game, I don't really have an end game because N'Zoth just brings me back 1/1s, and
Well, at least the
shit.
Trailblazer helps a little bit, right? Like, Kazakus is your end game. So you have Kazakus and N'Zoth as two pieces of the end game. At least it's crazy, disgusting value. If you jam Shadow Visions in the deck, that's another pack potentially that you can discover if you wanted, which is actually not something to like. It's nothing to scoff at if you think about it that way.
Yeah,
It's like there's so many little things. I didn't put Shadow Visions in the build because I'm going to experiment with it tomorrow. But I'm thinking, you can tech these weird archetypes to be a lot slower. And I think you might just be better off to be, building a Death Rattle Priest without the Highlander portion. Completely, cut out Kazakus, cut out the memery, and just play Shadow Visions with Elise. I think that's just fine. It's a slower, like a more consistent deck, because it always cures with double Crystalline Oracle, double Shifting Shade. So
Zalae.
Shadow Visions for Elise, huh? I hadn't.
Yeah,
That
that's a
one
lot
had-
of cards. Jesus.
I hadn't heard that yet. That's actually really powerful.
It is pretty cool.
I don't think Shadow Visions belongs in this Kazakus Priest you have built here, because
Yeah,
2 mana is a high price to pay for redundancy, and the redundancy is like, what are you doing with it in this deck? I don't know. You're just
right.
3 mana Powered Shield sucks. 4 mana Shattered Pain sucks. you need to have some kind of sweet combo going on to justify paying an extra 2 mana. You don't really have that in this deck, right? This is just a pile of stuff. But so I like the way you built it in that you don't have Shadow Vision there. But now that you've said Shadow Visions Elise, you got me thinking. That's
You could think
sweet.
of it as a +5 draw, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it could be draw 5 cards, like Shadow Vision in the end. And
if you play 2 Shadow Visions again, you can keep cycling them, until you find your pack.
That's pretty cool. That definitely is cool. One thing again that stands out that I mentioned even months ago, and it's even worse now because some of our options are gone with the expansions that got retired, is we just don't have enough greedy cards. Like, if I have all this card power, I just want cards that are extremely greedy for 9 mana, 10 mana that I can play in a priest like this. and have some type of end game where I can outvalue
I think
my
Free from
opponent.
Amber is that. Like I've come
That
to terms
card
with the
is-
fact that
Really?
no. Don't call that card bad. I think that card is actually really, really solid. Free from
Really?
Amber for a late game card, I think is the best Priest is gonna get. Like that card, it's 8 and plus you discover, so the range is pretty big, but you get to be slightly flexible about it. And there are some pretty big minions you can get. Some of them are gonna fit your archetype, some of them are gonna be defensive, some of them are gonna be Tarantus. No, I'm kidding, you can't discover that, but you can
No, but-
find Sogoth occasionally. It's just you
Right.
can find some flexible 8 drops. And I mean, Medivh's too slow for Priest, I think. I mean, it's just
Yeah, it's so Free for Amber. You're absolutely right. Free for Amber in terms of finding an 8-drop, which has always been a sweet spot for Forbidden, it is good, but it just doesn't exist. Like what I'm saying is like there's not even an 8-drop that's greedy for me that exists in the game for me to want to get. Unless that includes, does that include class cards too?
I wish, but it doesn't.
Oh, yeah, it
Otherwise,
doesn't
you could
include
get
cast
Light
cards, so
Lord
there's, like-
and memories.
Yeah,
of
there's
the-
nothing that I
genre.
even want. So it's that's what I mean. It's like I wish there were more Ysera's. I wish even Archleaf Fom still existed, or just some of those cards that were crazy greedy. They're gone too. So there's literally nothing to choose from at the top, or at the the high end.
So do we start playing double Forbidden Shaping, double Free from Amber in every Priest? And this is our
Uh-oh.
meta game.
I guess.
No,
So it's like if you want to
No,
die on
no.
turn 3.
not at all.
Okay, so I also brought a let's see, Hemet Druid. So I was going through the Hemet exercise, and
Oh, baby.
that is okay.
There
So
we go.
this is Mimi. Okay, totally Mimi. But I just want to throw like some of the other decks that I've come up with. The Hunter one I think is maybe the more obvious one, where you just try to set up Tundra Rhino, and just have, you run the quest, and then not the quest. Sorry, you play Hemet, then you run the quest to get all the 1/1s. So like basically everything in your deck is a 1/1, and then you run the Tundra Rhino so that you can do some kind of crazy combo. Okay, that was like one Hemet quest that I did, but then I was like, okay, let's do a different one. Can I find a second Hemet quest or Hemet deck? And dude, it was so hard to figure out something for Hemet, or at least something that wasn't just a bit, just like a slight improvement, like a Ramp Druid, that has a slight improvement for improving your draws at the end. And so something that totally abuses Hemet, and this is the only thing I could come up with, which was Blood of the Ancient One deck, which is kind of interesting. It has to be in a Druid, just given that Druid has ramping ability. I think one of the key things is finding Hemet. Like you have to figure out how to draw cards to find it. So there's all these loot hoarders and novice engineers and all these things to find Hemet. Once you find Hemet, that's when it kind of gets interesting, because then you're left with Barnes, Bright-Eyed Scout, Lunar Visions, Faceless Manipulator, and the Blood of the Ancient Ones. And the whole goal is to get a 2-turn combo. Yeah, like a 2-turn 30-30 combo kind of thing. And I think you have 2 attempts at it. You can do it twice. Maybe even crazy like Faceless at 30-30 if they put a taunt up or something stupid like that. But yeah, anyways, I thought it was just kind of, again, it's like puzzle solving, trying to figure out some way to make an interesting deck out of Hemet. Did you guys? What do you guys think about this deck? And did you guys?
I like
find
the idea
anything?
because it's very clear what you're trying to do. Like if you toy around with the idea of Hemet, where you cut out, so you play a bunch of cheap card draw, which he has removed once you don't need it anymore.
Mhm.
Then you Barnes out like whatever it is you Barnes out if there's a Blood of the Ancient One in there, and then you can Faceless that. Bright-Eyed Scout is surprisingly good in this spot. Like if you can pick up one of your bloods. My big issue is like what happens when your blood is in your hand and then you lose. Like do you just lose? When Blood of the Ancient One is in your
I
hand.
think when you're playing this deck, you're okay with just losing some percent of the time.
Okay,
Right?
sure.
You're
That's
not,
good. Yeah,
you're not
right.
looking to win 65%. You're looking for a
So true.
nice
So true.
35% of the
And
time.
before the
So
next
true,
tournament is
man.
nothing
So
but
true.
fucking Blood of the Ancient One, Hemet Druids.
I think you just accept it, you know.
All right.
This is
got
like
it,
your
got it.
shards. When you get your shards, in your hand, you're just fucked. It's like,
It's fine. It's fine. This is one of those dream decks where like you play for the dream where things come together.
Okay, I like it. All
but
right, good.
there's more than, I would say there's more dream scenarios though than what it seems. Because again, you have two.
Can you point out some cool ones to me?
No, I'm just saying, like, you can obviously Barnes just hitting blood is great.
That's pretty nice.
If you Lunar Vision and get, say, Faceless and blood, you can actually have the discount enough on both of them to be able to pull it off.
Oh, that's
so,
sick.
Yeah.
When you hem it, you're down to
Bright-Eyed
it's more
Scout.
likely.
Yeah, and Bright-Eyed Scout hits one. And the cool thing is that none of these things are legendary, except for Hemet and Barnes. But the others are doubles, so you get 2 chances at it, which is kind of it's an interesting aspect to it. So
I'd like
think,
2 chances at Hemet.
Oh God, I don't. I don't. So I mean, this is what I could come up with. Could you guys think of anything for Hemet? It's so hard, man, to come up with something to abuse it.
I think the key is that you don't want to abuse it because it is a legendary and a 6-mana card. I think I think from a competitive standpoint, the way to look at Hemet is you find decks where this is a good 6-mana card to just jam in there. It's kind of like Barnes, how you don't really want to build your whole deck around Barnes. You really also don't want to build your whole deck around Hemet from a competitive standpoint. Instead, you want to find a deck where Hemet happens to be good because you don't want to draw the cheap stuff in the late game and you can afford to run a 6-mana 6/6. It has a big downside in that it's a 6-mana 6/6 and aggro will kill you if you play a bunch of cards like that. Like that's slow. It's like a Draconic Crusher that's never even a 9/9, so it's just much worse on tempo.
Yeah.
But if you can find a deck that can afford that kind of card slot and it just really does well with drawing its 4+ mana cards, and a deck that's okay with losing every single game in fatigue because Hemet does that to you, you never ever make it to fatigue, then Hemet can be a good one of it.
You've not met my friend Jade Idol, I hear. You just play Hemet into Jade Idol, then you replenish. You're guaranteed to find nothing but Jade Idols and Jade Generators for the rest of the game.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty disgusting, is what it is. So,
I don't know if you need that though. I feel like I think the Jade deck's got enough end game without the Hemet.
Yeah.
And the Hemet makes it more vulnerable to aggro, which is the weakness of Jade, right?
Exactly. When all I have to do is add 2 creepers to what I already have. Oh, it's super easy. Super easy deck to continue having a lot of success with.
But maybe there's some aggressive mid-rangey deck where you just play your Hemet and then you draw your 4+ mana cards for the rest of the game and just kill them over the next 5 turns or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I
so
feel
why aren't you playing the quest in this deck?
In this deck? Oh, I thought about the quest.
Have you come up with like a Blood of the Ancient One Druid deck where you just jam that stuff? For free?
I tried that. I tried that. It's just it took too many more parts to pull it off, and Hemet is a legendary. If you could run 2 Hemets, I think this deck could potentially be a little bit easier. But the fact that there's only one in any of the decks, you have to search for it, and that's the hardest part when there's only one of a card.
Yeah, let's see what the quest for Druid does. I'm really excited to try that card out because I feel like the guy that lets you randomly find a 5 attack or more, the 3-mana 5/1 that can adapt itself if you have a 5 attack or more, like those on their own, I feel just complete the quest for you. Like you might not need to push too crazily for that quest completion, and eventually just jam ridiculous big stuff. So yeah, that's something I can't wait to try.
Okay, well, why don't we move on to Warlock, and we actually have 2 Warlocks that are quest Warlocks, achieving them in a different way. So we'll have Zalae talk about the Zoo one first, which he has. It's a discard Zoo.
Yeah, so discard Zoo. This might be my pick for strongest day 1 deck. You might be beating Pirate Warrior with this deck and everything else. You mulligan the quest against aggressive decks. Again, it's kind of like, I think all the quests, it's like the quests are kind of anti-slower deck cards, and they're really bad against aggro. But it's Zoo. It's built around a discard theme. Bunch of good stuff in there. I don't know what to say.
There's a Ravazor run to mention. It's a card.
Yeah, Ravazor. It's just efficient, right? If you're getting a 2-mana 2/2 with whatever it's called, adapt, then that's very efficient, and a lot of times that's going to work in Zoo. It might be bad in a Pirate Warrior metagame where they're keeping your board clear the entire time.
I'm surprised
but for the most part, Zoo can get that card off, right?
I'm surprised you left out the 4-mana 4/4 that eats up an egg.
Well, then you have to play the egg.
And then
there aren't that many eggs, and there's you only want so many cards that cost 4 mana in the deck. The main thing is I think there's kind of 2 different ways to build Zoo, and one is discard and one is egg and eat.
I see.
Right?
Gotcha.
The discard theme doesn't work well with the egg theme because the egg theme you're trying to assemble combos, and the discard theme you're just kind of dumping your hand onto the table, and you might be discarding key combo pieces and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So the discard theme doesn't play well with the egg combo theme, and I would guess that the discard theme is stronger, but I'm not really sure. Both. It all needs testing. It's new stuff.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I think the egg version will have, will be faster, right? Will pressure faster, but then doesn't have that awesome end game that this will have. So
the guaranteed end game, basically.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. Even just figuring out which of these is better is a really cool thing, and will take a lot of data to figure out. And even refine it too.
I think Clutch Mother Zavas and Silverware Golem give you some really nice broken potential, which is an important thing in the deck. And then, of course, the quest does a lot of inevitability. So I don't know. I do think this. I would guess that this is probably the stronger of the two ways to build Zoo. The egg thing, the new egg costs one more than the old egg, and even though it's bigger, it's still a net loss because you lose flexibility.
Here's an interesting thought. If you have to build the egg deck, would it become? Could you make it a mid-range lock? Is my question. Does it ever do you ever reach a point where you can play this card in mid-range, or do you need your cards so badly that you can't afford it? Because if you play double Silverware and the outlet of the Clutch Mother, then those kind of they work everywhere. The big question is can you slow down the deck and still play for the quest? Without going full meme with Deathwing, which is a single-handed deck quest completion. Yeah, sure. But the point is can you mid-range this quest?
So the way I see it, when I'm building a Zoo Warlock, I feel like Malkazar's Imp, Soulfire, Doomguard, Silverware Golem, Clutch Mother Zavas, all that stuff seems too powerful to not play.
Right.
And I think once I'm playing all these discard things, it really pushes me towards going in more of a, I'm going to call it full discard, even though it's not running everything like I have here on screen. And how many 4-drops do you really want in this deck? I feel like 3 to 4 is about the right amount. So you're going to cut the Defender of Argus or something. I'm just not that sold on the power level of the whole egg thing. There's 2 cards, right? There's a Pterodax for 4 mana, and there's an egg for 3 mana. And there's no Haunted Creeper anymore. So that's a pseudo egg that we don't have access to anymore.
I feel like
it's not the same.
I'm getting the weird. Personally, I think the Lucari Sacrifice quest is the most seemingly powerful quest with the least actual viability, and the discrepancy between what we think and what it'll come out as. I think it's pretty wide.
I think
a lot of quests were
very slow.
Yeah, it's very slow,
slow.
and it's very susceptible to board clears too. So the snowball.
I'm not sure about that.
No.
You don't think so?
Because if
pretty.
Well, if you kill the 3/2s, they come back next turn. That's why it may not be susceptible.
But it takes a little bit to start snowballing out of control. Is kind of what I'm trying to get at, because maybe one removal they have, and then it'll take a couple more turns.
If it's the 8-mana dragon, it's susceptible to that for sure, because that one develops while clearing at the same time.
Yeah,
but if you're just clearing and then passing with an empty board, the quest is still overrunning you with value and tempo and everything. It's fine.
And that's why I think
what this quest is really vulnerable to. Like Noxious saying, what this quest is really vulnerable to is, Pirate Warrior, them hitting you in the face. It's so bad against that. You snap mulligan against Pirate Warrior. You do not want Lucari Sacrifice.
Okay, so here's a question especially with Zoo, because this came up before, on our show. Do you play Lucari Sacrifice on turn 1?
There are matchups where you keep it and play it on turn 1, and then there's matchups. It's going to depend. That's the answer.
Okay.
I hope we don't have a super
That's what makes
polarized
Hearthstone
meta.
great.
Yeah.
You don't have such simple answers all the time to things. A lot of times it depends on what's going on.
Yeah, but
you have people that say no matter what, play it first. I mean, I want to just achieve it as fast as I can. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
wrong.
That guy's wrong.
I know.
Yeah.
That's what I think
But
too.
here's my big worry: is the metagame has both Taunt Warrior and Pirate Warrior, and your mulligan phase looks like, well, I guess we're flipping a coin. What do we do with this quest?
Remember the old Zoo handlock thing where you look at how many cards they mulliganed?
Yeah.
You're like, all right, if they kept a lot of cards, they're probably Zoo. If they mulligan everything, they're probably handlock. And then you got the handlock with the nut draw and you mulligan wrong, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, we're screwed now.
Exactly. So just to, I guess, round out, just to talk about a few more of the cards. It's a lot of cards that we've seen, like Possessed Villager and Malkazar's Imp and Darkshire Librarian for the discards, as well as the new Lucari Fellhound, the big taunt that a lot of people love and been talking about. In Knife Jugglers, Direwolf Alpha, some old school Zoo cards, Soulfires, double Soulfire, the 2 Doom Guards, of course, and Ravasaur Runt, which is that adapt card.
Yeah, you got to think the Lucari Fellhound putting a Silverware Golem into play is just going to beat the heck out of Pirate Warrior.
Yeah, I think
that's kind of why this is my pick for best deck on day 1.
I think Lakari Fellhound with just 2 creepers in any deck just beats the shit out of Pirate Warrior.
Yeah,
like
that's
I
for
think
sure.
those
I think
4 cards literally destroy Pirate Warrior. So
Lakari Fellhound is like the glue that makes this deck just get there. You know, I'm
Yep.
talking about the quest, how it just, oh, well, the quest is hard to pull off because la 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 la, and I'm just being a Debbie Downer at this point. But the fact that you get a format at 3/8, it's not a defensive Arcus that says, please have a board state so I can do something defensive. It's like, no, here's this big wall, and if you have a Clutch Mother in your hand, she stays there. And then we just keep going for the discard, and you
Right.
have the time to get that quest completed into turn 5. It's just
the Clutch
card
Mother
carries.
is such an enabler. Like, don't even look at what the +2/+2 aspect of it is. It's more that it stays in your hand, and you can discard something every time you have a discard hand. And that's like so good in terms of at least finishing the quest. Eventually, you will play some 8/8 or 10/10, which is really, really nice. But the enabling aspect of it, I think, is the key part to this card, and it's really, really good. Okay, so we talked about Zoo. Let's talk about a different way of completing this quest, which is a deck that I put together. And get ready. Here he comes.
Let's go.
We've got.
Hit us up.
Okay, so the premise of completing the quest for this one is the opposite. So you don't play a bunch of discard cards or cards that discard. You play one, and it's Deathwing. And because it's potentially the easiest way to enable it. In terms of fitting things into your deck, it's the most efficient way. It's like a 1-card way to complete the quest. So 28 cards to do whatever you want with, basically. And I chose the handlock route just as just something to discuss. And mainly I chose it for 2 reasons. Just to really point out how lacking of heal we have. Like literally, before we would have vendors, and you could of course Earth and Ring Farseer, of course Reno and things like that. Now vendor's gone, so you're like, what else do we have? What else can we do? And so that's why I have like apothecaries in here. Also, I wanted to show that Blood Bloom, especially in combination with Violet Illusionist, is actually crazy cool in terms of what you can do with that. Because you can cast you can basically cast any of the giant spells that you want. And I used to have Doom in here, and I had Double Twisting Nether for a while and things like that. But I took those out just for the sake of trying to make something that can survive a bit better against more aggressive type of decks. But that combination is just something that was like eye-opening. I was like, wow. I mean, I can do super cool things with that, and I can even have potentially really incredible turns from the Div and things like that. So
I will just to say here, I think your deck would be disgusting and wild. Like it might just be the most fun stuff ever.
yeah, that's
Like just the fact that we have all these
Reno,
combos you can
Healbot.
actually play. Yeah, you can actually heal
right.
yourself into like a Curator, into Deathwing, into GG. That's
Explosion for
super
2
fun.
mana.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
Implosion oh my god. Yeah.
Ugh.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's definitely crazy. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I mean, it's going to be hard to stay alive again because you can't heal. And some combinations you can have is if you have like Zoo just filling the board, Cold Apothecary, and then wiping the board with Blood Bloom and something else. But that's not going to be consistent at all. So you're still going to rely on putting big taunts up like the Razor Leaf, humongous Razor Leaf mixed with Shamblers or Defender of Arguses and cards like that, right, to slow things down. In the end, I think you'll be damaged a bit too much that you can, you'll be able to live long enough just for the whole Deathwing into the finish. But this is a different way of approaching it. You can just Deathwing and have more of a mid-range deck too. Like you could have taken that approach too, but this is just more of an extreme.
Yeah, I like so you have like double Earthling Farseer for healing, double Cult Apothecary, 1 Siphon Soul. I'd kick it up to 2, especially with Blood Bloom being like a very good combination with it. Sure, you're paying 6, but you're getting 3 back.
Yeah.
Just like self-damage for 3 and then kill something. I think the big issue with Blood Bloom is it's essentially forcing you to kill multiple things with whatever action you're about to take, since you're spending 2 cards on the move, which is, or at least develop onto the board. Which is why, like, when I look at the card, I'm thinking there are disgusting things you can do with Blood Bloom, but you're gonna have to start running like the AOE you're not comfortable with, right? Like Hellfire no longer feels good with Reno gone. Like that's a card, Hellfire Potion. I'm just super wary of including this in my decks, not because I don't want to. They're fantastic board clears, but I take so much damage in the process that you almost have to at least 2 for 2, and then possibly 3 to 4 for 2, depending on the value gain. I wonder how good Bloodbloom could be in a slightly faster list, with like the feeding time, just to get the tempo early on turn 2, or it's like a bad implosion, granted, or even Karakazam. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it in terms of a fast deck. That's interesting.
Bloodbloom's
the
a very
concept.
dangerous card. It's
is.
It's fast mana, but they put it in a class where it's really hard to exploit. When you're getting fast mana, what you want to do is something proactive. You want to be putting dudes in play. So like Bloodbloom Karakazam comes to mind, for instance, right? Bloodbloom Implosion, because that's an actual powerful card. Because the powerful Warlock spells now, the expensive ones, are like Twisting Nether and Siphon Soul. Discounting those is not as strong as discounting something proactive, because you can't get ahead on board and kill your opponent with your cheated mana. Right. Instead, you're just, I don't know, catching up or whatever. Right. And also, the life loss is just so relevant because, like you were saying, ChanMan, there's not a lot of healing going around. So paying 8 life to Twisting Nether is... you might just die anyways,
exactly. No, that's true. That's definitely not the card you want to be running Bloodbloom on, especially if you don't have Violet Illusionist on it. But it's interesting, though. I mean, at least the Deathwing finishing the quest, too, I think is an interesting way to do it.
That's sweet.
Yeah. I think
that's a really cool interaction.
So efficient that... it's not this deck for sure, but I could see...
Do we know that works, by the way? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
it does. It's a discard.
It's discard your hand afterwards.
Yeah, it's discard your hand. Yeah. So just having 6 cards to discard, and you get a 12/12 on the board.
Oh, well, no, here's the trick. You play Dinomancer, and it's your only other minion, and you discard the second copy of... you play 3 minions, Deathwing and 2 Dinomancers. You jam a Dinomancer on the board, and then you discard the other Dinomancer with Deathwing after you kill the first one, and then you just keep cycling them infinitely.
Wait, what's Dinomancer? Am I...
Cruel Dinomancer. Death Rattle summon a random minion you discarded this game. Oh, and since you only discarded Dinomancers, they cycle into each other infinitely. That could be a big fat meme.
Got you. No, that's funny.
Let's go.
It's a loop. Yeah, it's creative. Definitely creative. Yeah, but I foresee... I'm just going to make a guess right now. I foresee Deathwing being the option of choice. I don't know what deck it is, but being the option of choice to like finish the Kari sacrifice. That's just my...
Because of efficiency.
Yeah, efficiency, and A is just simple, and then the efficiency I think is so good.
Okay, wait. Is there a card that lets you refill your hand? Like, assume you're playing a zoo deck, right? And you're just like, I have this Deathwing that I need to discard a bunch of cards for, or like a mid-range deck. That would have to be Doom, right? So you have to go Doom into Deathwing.
Yeah,
something like get the
discard. If you were doing a mid-range, or you're doing a deck that actually spends cards at a very fast pace or doesn't have cantrips in it and things like that, yeah, you'd have to do that.
Yeah.
It's fun. This is the kind of thing that's just super fun to kind of go through and just try to figure out. But okay, well, I think that's it for the decks that we have. Why don't we talk about our top 5 cards? Just kind of round thing, just ending the Journey to Ungoro just the whole pre-release and predictions and everything. All right, I'm going to bring up this graphic that we have.
The good stuff.
Yeah, so here we go. And our lists are... Actually, me and Noxious have a couple that are similar, but Zalae has a completely different list. So this is going to be very, very interesting.
My list is 2 or less. And when I was like...
This is so crazy.
I had a lot of options of cards that I liked, and they were kind of interesting, kind of powerful, whatever. And then I was like, all right, let's just get rid of everything expensive, because who cares about that?
You're such a pro player. That's what pretty much every pro player does. Okay, why don't you talk about yours first?
All right, mine first. So Galaka Crawler, 2 mana, 2/3 beast, destroy a pirate, gain +1/+1. Not the most elegant card, not the most fun necessary. I think it is a really fun card, because everybody likes crushing a pirate warrior's dreams, right? F those guys. Let's get them.
Oh my god.
2 mana, kill your guy. Here's a spider tank that doesn't overload me and assassinated your minion. I like it. That's fun.
Oh, we're talking about Vilespine Slayer.
Yeah.
No, 2 mana. 2 mana. It's even better.
Yeah, 2 mana.
Yeah, so this card will not prevent Pirate Warrior from being a good deck. Pirate Warrior will either be a good deck or not be a good deck, irrelevant to this card. All this card can do is make it so that if Pirate Warrior is a very good, very popular deck, it makes it slightly less dominant kind of thing, because that's just what tech cards do. People don't jam Acidic Swamp Ooze in all of their decks, and in the same way, you're not going to run Galaka Crawler in all your decks unless somehow 40% of the meta is Pirate Warrior or something silly like that. So, I
It's
think
pretty disgusting what it does if you play against.
I'm really glad to have a tool to help keep Pirate Warrior in check. You know, that makes me
Let's
happy.
just count the things that they added. This and the 3/3 weapon destruction, give health, and all.
But it was overdue,
taunts.
man. That
I mean,
weapon
they just
destruction was
destroyed
overdue.
Pirate
I don't
Warrior.
think that card's a big deal. I think that's a worse version of Acidic Swamp Boost.
I think
for the
so
most
too.
part.
But it's just another card that they made that.
If they had made it a 3/4, then we're talking.
Oh gosh.
Now we're talking.
Now that would be oppressive to weapons. Oh my god, people would be upset.
Yep.
Yeah, so Galaka Crawler, it's
Okay.
it's nice to have something against those pirates. I
Oh,
wish we had had this one set sooner. You know,
Yeah.
this really should have come out when Small Time Buccaneer and Patches came out.
Or, in a
think-
patch
yeah,
in
that makes a
between.
lot of
How
sense.
about that? Like a trickle release of, hey, here's a problem. Let's fix it. With like one
Yeah.
card a month after the problems start cropping up.
And then the next card I'll talk about Firefly, 1 mana, 1/2 elemental battle cry, add a 1/2 elemental to your hand. A very innocent looking card, I would say. I don't think anyone sees this and gets terrified.
Mhm.
But I wonder if we're just going to see a lot of this card in the future.
Yes.
One card I keep
Guaranteed.
comparing it to is Echoing Ooze. It's like an Echoing Ooze can be played over multiple turns. It's much more flexible than an Echoing Ooze. You can play it on turn 1, and then whenever you have a hole in your curve, or on turn 1, and whenever you need to set up for an elemental, right? There's that whole elemental synergy thing as well. Even without the elemental aspect of this card, even if it were like a non-elemental minion, I think it might be playable. But with the elemental, I think it's a cool card. And I also think it's, in a way, maybe even a tool against Pirate Warrior, because the 1/2 body is pretty annoying for them. It eats their N'Zoth First Mate, it eats their patches, it survives a hit from their Rusty Hook from First Mate, it doesn't die efficiently to a Fiery War Axe attack, it's only 2 health instead of 3, that kind of thing. Just all of the Pirate Warrior stuff doesn't quite line up that efficiently against the Firefly. So this annoying little guy could get some good work done. I also like it as a Shaman card because just bodies are strong for Flame Tongue Totem. And speaking of Shaman cards and Flame Tongue Totem, Primal Fin Totem.
Yes.
2 mana 0/3 totem. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 Murloc. I have no idea how good the Murloc stuff's going to be, but I like this card even outside of the Murloc stuff. When I see it, I first compare it to Mana Tide. A lot of people see Morose, but Morose, A, it costs 3 mana instead of 2, which is a big deal, and B, 1 health instead of 3 is a big deal, right? So when there's a Morose, you play Ravaging Ghoul and it kills everything. When there's a Primal Fin Totem, you play Ravaging Ghoul, it does not fix the problem. Same thing with Maelstrom Portal, it does not fix the Primal Fin Totem problem. So the extra bodies from Primal Fin Totem are very dangerous with Flame Tongue. So, and these kind of 0/3 totems just play well in Shaman because Shaman has the tools to protect it. If you try and flood the board against the Shaman to make it so that you can just value trade their Primal Fin Totem, you run the risk of cards like Maelstrom Portal and Lightning Storm just destroying you. And if you don't flood the board, if you have like a relatively even board, then they can make swing turns with cards like Jade Claws or Jade Lightning or Flame Tongue or whatever. So it's a difficult to answer threat. It can run away with the game if you don't answer it quickly, and it's 4 health for only 2 mana. And that's a really important stat when you're looking at a minion, the health to mana ratio, because a lot of Hearthstone is about clearing the opponent's board, and it's hard to clear. It's hard to deal 4 damage on turn 2. That's a lot of stuff.
It's got infinite value too, so it's well beyond that. Another, I would say, indirect benefit of it whenever I was trying to build with it too is that I felt like playing things from below was okay also in like a Murloc.
Yeah, it's like
if you can.
It's your replacement for Totem Golem. It's probably not as good, but it seems like a really strong card to me. It could be kind of sleeper broken. That's kind of what I was looking for. Like, not all these cards are that sleeperish, the ones that I picked, but I was looking for cards that might be seeing a lot of play.
Right. Gotcha. No, that's cool. That's a good one. And then let's see. You've got Primordial Glyph.
Yep.
I think we talked about that some, but more comments on it?
I think the card's super strong. You'd probably run 2 of it in every mage deck. Until I've played with it and see otherwise, I assume I just want 2 of those in every mage deck. You get to discover a spell, so your opponent doesn't know what the heck to play around, and you have this powerful option, and it costs 2 less, so it's like completely impossible to play around. And it's just you get the flexibility of Discover without any loss of tempo. Usually Discover cards, you're paying extra mana somewhere. This costs 2 and discounts by 2. You could actually gain tempo if you play this with a Sorcerer's Apprentice in play. You could be paying 1 and discounting by 2. And then you discount again if you play it while the sorceress
You could
apprentice
play a
is still in play.
4-cost spell basically
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
for 0
It's-
mana or
yeah,
1 mana. Sorry, it's like ridiculous. Yeah.
It's just really good on its own. It's really hard to play around. Mage spells are good, and you get flexibility, and they can't play around it, and you get a mana discount, so you can like cheat and set stuff up. The card seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
And then,
Mhm.
speaking of crazy, Clutch Mother Zavas. I mean, if it's the last card you draw in a game, it's not useful. It's a 2 mana 2/2. But that's the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is you're getting a 2 mana 6/6 draw 2 cards or something like that. Like what the heck? If you discard this twice, that's what it is, right?
Mhm.
Every time you discard this, you basically draw an extra card, and you're getting a 2 mana 4/4 or a 2 mana 6/6. It's like, what the heck? This is Edwin Van Cleef. It's a card that's maybe too broken and is kind of carrying an underpowered class to mediocrity, or in the case of Warlock, it may be carrying a powerful class to astonishing levels of power. Who knows?
I mean, it's a necessity in that deck that we're talking about. I think
It's kind of high
the
variance
discard-
though, right?
The discard's good. I don't think people understand how hard the discard quests will be able to achieve if you don't have a card that cantrips itself automatically. Because not only is it not a penalty because it comes back, but again, you don't have to life tap just to get the penalty, that helps you with a quest. It's such a cool dynamic that they've done. They've made like a penalty into a benefit back into a penalty. It's kind of like crazy. But yeah, I don't think people understand that. If they didn't if Clutch Zavas didn't exist, it would be this weird dynamic. It would be harder, much, much harder.
I think the
to
quest
complete
would be bad, legit, because
I did too.
you have like the fact that I'm sure like the games where you find Clutch Mother, the fact that she's infinitely discardable just makes that quest almost just gonna complete itself.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Like I like the card design wise. Like I love the design of the card. It's one of those things where like I'm fascinated by the idea of having discard atlas like Silverware and Fist of Draxus and this. But I feel like the games where they haven't, the games where they don't, are going to be so vastly different in terms of how well the zoo does or whatever the deck is that plays this, that we might just get frustrated at it. It's like Edwin, right? Like the time you have coin, prep, Phantom Knight, Edwin. And the guy's like, well, I guess I'm dead on turn 2. It's one of those days.
See, I think that's where it's going to be interesting. I think that's where Zoo's going to end up landing is, I don't know, I'm predicting that where it lands is that the quest is just kind of like something nice that you have at the end versus, like there's going to be opportunities where it's like, screw the whole discard thing, dude. I want the whole silverware golem and not discarding anything, just like regular discards do right now. I just want no penalties at all and from discard and just go face, that sort of thing. And then I think the discard just kind of comes along with things. If you get Zavas, then all of a sudden you start considering it. If you don't get it early, then it's just like a normal Zoolock type of game. You don't even try to be efficient with how you discard and things like that from the standpoint of the quest and not avoiding penalty.
Yeah, I have a question for you guys. Why is this thing a beast? Is that like a flavor or lore thing, or
dinosaurs?
So.
Everything's
Yeah.
a beast in the set.
Yeah,
That's really just
Dinosaur?
it. Well,
It's
I'm
like a
guessing
bug or
it's some
something,
kind of
right?
like bug dinosaur thing. Yeah, it's some
Okay.
primal bug.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess bugs are just kind of beasts, is the way they're looking at it.
yeah.
It just kind of threw me off. I was like, wait a minute, this Warlock class card is a beast? What game am I playing right now?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Everything. Well, one thing's good is that Curator all of a sudden got like a lot of value across the board. Like I've actually thought about Curator many times just to I need card draw. Oh, Curator. like because there's beasts in every single deck. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Okay, Noxious, your turn.
Yeah, so again, these top 5 cards are not in order of power, they're in order of what design I like. The first design I love the most is probably Crystal Core. That's a rogue quest that makes all your minions
baby.
be, 5/5s, which I think is, the fact that you have to complete it by playing 4 copies of a minion or 4 minions with the same name is really cool because there's the whole Firefly type thing, right? You alluded to Firefly, that gives you a flame elemental. So there's Firefly, there's the Igneous elemental as well that gives you 2 copies of the little flame guy. So on its own, that's doable, but there's also the whole bouncy shenanigans that you can try to do with wisps and everything. Again, that may not be a good quest. Like, it might turn out to just be completely awful, but I'm willing to accept that that's the case. It's just one of those quests that's so fun to build around, because that's a real build around. It's not like, here's this normal tempo deck I have, and it works okay. Now let me jam this quest. No, here's this quest that I build at least like 6 to 8 slots of my deck around, and I try to make it happen as fast as I can to actually milk it. So I thought that was pretty cool, design-wise. Then the other card is the Hydrologist, 2-mana 2/2 for Paladin. It's a Murloc for all that's worth. It's gonna be worth something. Zoo Paladin is surprisingly good even right now, like in terms of how consistently it gets its 1-drops out and it gets the hand buff with Grime Street Outfitter and everything. Having extra Murlocs can always be useful. It's not going to be too bad in that deck. And the fact that it gives you an extra card on top of that makes it a card just like... I wouldn't say it's exactly like the Primordial Glyph in that I play 2 of in every Paladin deck, but a 2/2 that draws me a card I probably try to play 2 of in every Paladin deck. It's just something I can flexibly put everywhere, and it's something that Paladins sorely needed. I've had discussions with people about Argent Lance, and people saying it's bad. Argent Lance is not a bad card. It's just Paladin sucks so hard that Argent Lance doesn't solve that, right? And I think this is another replacement. We had Minibot, then Minibot rotated at the same time as it made Argent Lance irrelevant. And now Argent Lance is rotating, so now we have Hydrologist as another 2-cost answer for the early game, which I liked. Stampede. Apparently you and I, ChanMan, are agreeing on that card.
Yeah.
1-mana lock and load. Thanks, just thanks.
Thanks.
It sucks that it's not
Yes.
spell-based.
Yes.
Because I would have loved to just make a control hunter that's spell-based, but it seems like we're going to be, playing beasts, 1-drop beasts, maybe. We just cycle infinitely. We get a bunch of 6 and 7 cost minions from playing a bunch of useless ones. I'm down with that, and it fits with the hunter quest, which I think is good. What's your thoughts on Stampede, by the way, Zalae? Because clearly ChanMan and I like it.
Doesn't seem competitive to me.
Wow.
The idea is you exploit it with cheap beasts, right? Like the Hunter Quest. But I don't think you want this card in that deck, because this card draws a bunch of beasts which you never want to play, because your whole game plan is I play the quest on 1, then I play a bunch of beasts on turns 2 through 4, then I play the 5-drop on 5, maybe 6 if I'm unlucky, and then I play a bunch of 3/2 Raptors and stuff. Where in that do you have time to play a bunch of random 5-mana 2/5 beasts and stuff?
Okay,
right.
So I see. The point is,
Like, what turn am I playing Stampede on?
Probably like 8 or 9, I guess. I don't know.
I think the game. I don't know. Like,
All right. So,
I just think I have better things to do with my mana than Stampede. Maybe I'm wrong. Like,
Well-
the card does kind of draw a lot of cards for 1 mana in a card, so it's potentially very powerful in that sense. It's just that I don't know that fits with what I'm doing.
yeah. So
Okay.
I think it really comes down to what faction you're in. You're either in the faction that thinks that the Hunter Quest is going to be super strong, and that's going to be the Hunter deck, or you're going to be in the faction where people don't think that just mid-range, just all the things that they added for Hunter are going to be enough of an improvement to make Hunter viable again. And for me, I'm a little bit.
Well, what about the Hunter Sucks faction?
Yeah, well, the Hunter Sucks faction there too.
I don't know which faction I am,
Yeah.
but I'm not that big on the Hunter Quest.
So I think I'm in the non-quest like faction, and
Yeah,
because
I'm with you.
and if I'm there and I look at, like, I take a step back and I look at what has Hunter needed, like what are the weaknesses Hunter have had, and what does Hunter need? I mean, one of the big ones has always been card draw, like huge ones. We've had to run just garbage cards, like Elec and I mean, Quick Shot had nice potential, but not usually for card draw. It was used more for just straight removal.
It was
at
card draw
times.
when you won the game right away.
Yeah, exactly. When you're winning the game anyways. So I like with Stampede, for me, it's a card that finally gives Hunter the ability to just be able to reload, just to have ammo for an extra turn or two, which Hunter at times, that's all they've needed, especially with some other additions that they're having in this set too. And so for me, it's not about cheap beasts. It's just a matter of late game. Can I get an extra 2 cards for myself and see what we can do with it?
I guess at this point, my question with Stampede is, because I don't think getting 2 extra cards is, like, random beasts especially, is particularly good. My question is, maybe this is more fit for a mid-range deck for the quest that goes, I play Jeweled Macaws, and I play Fiery Bats, and I play Alley Cats, and then I draw those with Tol'vir Warden in the mid-game, and then I Stampede later on with the Raptors that come out of the quest. Because if you Stampede with a bunch of Raptors, it's still pretty good. You open up the sequence with 1, and then you just cycle the Raptors nonstop. That's fine, and then you get just extra cards for afterwards.
Right.
If your 3/2s get cleaned up by Primordial Dragon or whatever. So maybe this is more of a I'm playing the quest in a mid-range deck type card.
Yeah, you could do that too. Yeah, that would work pretty well too. But as long as it's a card drawing mechanic for Hunter, I'm all for it because lock and load. They tried it with lock and load, but the problem is it was like the wrong class to do lock and load because Hunter,
No, it was that it didn't give you spells. It just gave you beasts sometimes. If it gave me spells, I'd be good to go with that. But the fact that it's, oh, I can get a high main off of my lock and load arcane shot. Thank you. Like now I'm just done. Like I can't play this ever. That's what sucked the most. You can't go Cloaked Huntress into Infinite
Okay, that's true.
Secrets.
That's a good point. Yeah,
That was a problem.
You could, maybe cycle into just damage, right, and finish games possibly and things like that.
Technically, yeah. But...
Yeah. I guess that's true. But again, like lock and load's gone, right? So this is, I think even like replacing that, and again just providing something because Buzzard's such a waste. Like every class has its own card, drawing mechanic, and Hunter, had one that was nerfed like years ago now and still hasn't been replaced. So that's kind of why I had it too.
Yeah. Well, my next card is Blood Bloom. Apparently you like that one too, ChanManV, so we'll talk about that afterwards.
But yeah.
We already talked about it a little bit, but I like the fact that Blood Bloom is like Warlocks are getting away. Like they already had Soulfire, which is very spooky. Because if there's ever a world in which you're able to trade, that health for a tempo play, like my dream scenario with Blood Bloom is like a Molten Giant scenario. Like where I just go Blood Bloom, Doom, Molten Taunt. And I'm just like, hello, brother.
Oh my god, that's
like,
awesome.
oh, shit.
That is awesome.
That's what I want to do with Blood Bloom at some point.
Dude, that is so cool.
If only you could heal back.
You could make that happen.
Yeah.
Well, you can do it in Wild, right? Blood Bloom, Molten Reno, hello. Like, or just one Molten, I guess, since you can't have two.
We'll settle for one.
We'll settle for one.
Have
Molten.
two if you believe hard enough, not just don't sell yourself short. Anything's possible.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
So basically, that's what Blood Bloom is for me. It's crazy good card design, and Ravenous Pterodax. I think this card might qualify as my. Keep an eye out for this bitch because if it's good, it's gonna be way too good. Like I think if this card is good, it's gonna be ridiculous. Like a 4-mana adapt twice. Like you thought Adaptazor was a problem, right? Like you're like, oh, 5/6 that can't be targeted with 5/9. That's great. How about a 4/7 that can't be targeted by spells or hero powers on turn 4 that spawns an egg? Like, are you mad? That spawns a 5. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's completely bonkers. So. Potentially broken card, but they probably tested it internally and found out it doesn't work as well as I'm, thinking. So that's the hope, right? That's the hope.
I mean, at least that combo is really, really good, and we've had kind of very powerful combos in the past, whether it was like Nerubian Egg and Void Terrors and things like that were just great. But very.
When you double adapt, I like the Stealth Wind Fury combo, and then you put some power warnings
like
on that bad boy. Get to work. Woo!
Exactly.
Pio's gone, huh?
Yeah, Pio's gone. But
yeah, that's another issue with the whole egg game plan is that power overwhelming rotated out.
Mm-hmm. It's even less likely to be able to trigger it. Okay, with me, again, Blood Bloom, and I think we Stampede, of course. Time Warp. I just think that just that type of mechanic, and I think folks said it's a mechanic from Magic, is crazy powerful. I mean, it allows for mage. Any kind of ability that they added to the game, I feel like that allows for some kind of end game, some kind of possibly new type of end game, is is a good card from my standpoint, at least from the design wise. Like I want to see that. I want to see us be playing different types of things.
Yeah, it's diversity. It's sweet.
Yeah, exactly. Shadow Vision Visions we talked about earlier too. I think these cards, particularly Blood Bloom and Shadow Visions, are cards that have a lot of potential for the future too. It's one of these cards that probably only gets better with new cards coming out. And given that we've got 2 more expansions, like full expansions with who knows how many spells per class, like these spells only get better. So I really like the versatility just from a design standpoint. When you design cards like that, that's a very, very smart way to design things. And then lastly, Envenom Weapon is something cool that they added. Being able to add poisonous to your weapon is pretty cool. I think it might be too expensive, still at 3, but imagine just casting this and you have 2 swings of your weapon and you're playing some kind of tempo rogue. That's pretty sweet.
It's pretty sweet.
That's pretty sweet.
Can you prep that out?
Yeah. It's Shadow. I mean, you can Blade Flurry too and kill everything. I mean, you can do whatever. That
doesn't work.
Oh, doesn't
they
work?
said it wouldn't work.
It doesn't work. Oh,
yeah, I'm pissed right now.
But shoot, that sucks.
That's why we nerfed Blade Flurry for
know,
Envenom. Wait, no, we didn't.
And then I think given that we had 2 repeats, I'll say like a just a consolation or whatever is Gentle Megasaur or the Murloc. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Dude, I think that card is maybe the single card that makes Murlocs viable.
I don't know, man. Have you played Zoo Paladin? Like, Zalae, did you play it early?
Anything
Did I play Zoo Paladin? I don't know what that means.
Murloc Pally. Does that ring a bell?
Just
so like you play small time recruits and divine favor, and you just draw your entire deck, and your Murlocs are like 5/7s by the end of the buffing, and you draw 0 cards every time. Like, it's ridiculous.
I gotta say, the Murloc stuff, they got a lot of powerful new cards. The Murloc tribe historically, from my memory of Hearthstone, pretty much sucks. But there's a bunch of new good ones. I wonder if there's gonna be some really powerful Murloc decks popping up. Maybe Hungry Crab becomes a thing in the same way that Galactic Crawler.
Think it will be. Yeah, I think it actually will.
It's gonna be interesting to see, like the Hydrologist that Noxious pointed out, and then maybe the Megasaur, the 3-mana 3/2 that discovers a Murloc, the 2-mana 2/3 that buffs a Murloc. Yep. That's a lot of powerful new Murlocs. So it's definitely something to look out for. Like, what's the best way to build a Murloc deck now?
Yeah,
probably still jam a Finch in there.
That 2-mana 2/3 is ridiculous, man.
Finch is really close, but I think in the end you still jam one because there's so many of these new Murlocs that have Battle Cry. So Finch negates that, but you still get a turn where you still get a turn where you're putting 2 cards at once down, so it's good. But for me, anything where you can adapt multiple minions, like depending on what you have on the board, is potentially super, super good. And I think that just that added benefit, whether it's like a Bloodlust or it's just Divine Shield on all of them, or Stealth on all of them, it's something, right, that just keeps the Murloc train going.
Oh man,
it's going to make it even better. So
is Murloc Druid real with evolving spores and Megasaur? Let's go, baby.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but definitely in. I just think Shaman obviously having so many chances, and I built Murloc decks for every single class, and things that were kind of shadow stepping Megasaurs, and I don't know, things like that were kind of interesting. But I think just the fact that you can do adapt on 2 or 3 minions is pretty scary if you get the right one. That's pretty nuts. So we'll have to see which at least which class, or if Shaman is going to have 2 super good classes with Murlocs and Elementals. That's going to be pretty crazy to see. But okay, well, anyways, I think that concludes our top 5s. And before we move on to global games, I do want to give a shout out to a bunch of folks that support the show. All our patrons, of course, that, right now Valuetown is 100% supported by the Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Valuetown to go and make a pledge or support if you want us to obviously continue doing the show, help grow the show. But I do want to give a shout out to a few folks right now, our legendary producers, Mike T and Richard S, of course, and then a few others, Seb S, Ray Dan, Eli B, Alex F, David G, Bryce L, David A, Nicholas H, and Johannes von S. Thank you so much for doing that. Unfortunately, we've dropped below our milestone, or first milestone, so we're not going to be doing it, and it's mainly because some of the folks that are, patrons, the payment methods decline. So, you subtract it whenever they decline for whatever reason. I don't know. It just happens from time to time for people.
They don't even cancel.
Yeah,
if they knew it was getting declined, they would put it back in, but it just...
Exactly. So, I guess check that out if you guys, aren't aware that maybe that's happening. I also want to mention that I added a new milestone for that's Mechatorp Workshop related. Given that so many people love Mechatorps, me and Noxious were talking that we wanted to add a milestone where we would do a special additional Mechatorps, video kind of mini episode for patrons that are, interested in that. So take a look at that. That's like a milestone that's after this milestone. And if you guys are interested in that, help us try to achieve that. Also, we're available on iTunes, and I just want to let folks know that you can find us there and help out the show also if you go and leave us a nice review, a 5-star review, and some comments. A lot of people have done that in the past this week. Unfortunately, we don't have anybody this week, so we got to hopefully get some folks next week to do that. But yeah, we have a lot of audio listeners too, so I just want to kind of throw that out there for folks. And thanks to everybody for supporting the show. We've been having a lot of great interaction with people emailing us and doing all those things. So it's been really a wonderful time for the show. But okay, let's